Hello and welcome back to the Will I Vike It podcast. My special guest today, I'm rather excited, I must be honest, is Kjell Braaten. I'm a very big fan, so I'll try not to fan out too much on you.
Well, I'm a fan of you too, so.
Yeah. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk a little bit about what you do. As we were just talking off camera, we can't really do the whole food thing. So we're going to talk through some of your music and your instruments and that kind of stuff instead.
Yeah, I guess talking about food for an hour would be boring. So it's a good
Well, at the end, there are a few sort of questions that I ask everyone. They are just for fun, but they are food based. So I'll be interested to see what your answers are for those.
Yeah.
So you kind of got started with the whole Viking music thing like a long time before it became a big deal, right? I mean, what, 20 years ago, I think?
Yeah, we started back in the late 90s. It was a band called Avas, which was the first one, and it was. Today it's kind of fun to look back at it because three of the members of that band was me, who has been with like Nebala, Fortuna, and lots of bands, and then there's Gustav from Folket Borta for Nordavind, Astralside, working with Runahill, and it's also Maria, who today is well known from Heilung. And
she's quite well known now.
Yeah, we started back late 90s, and the first show we had was actually New Year's Eve 2000 at a 1,000-year celebration for one of the heathen communities in Norway.
Oh, right.
So yeah, it's a while ago.
Yeah. So did you get? It's sort of personal question, and really, but I just wondered whether you played music sort of as a child and growing up with sort of more what people think of as usual instruments like guitars and drums and things, and then you got into the historical side, or was it the historical side that got you playing music?
It's a long story, really. I started up in the classical scene. I was actually a tuba player, and I was like to be a virtuoso tuba player when I was like a kid. And but then when I got like 18 or 19 or something, I just got really fed up with the classical scene. It's different now, but back then it was all about what you cannot do, all these rules, and it bored me. So why can't I do this? I think it sounds nice. So by the end of it, I just skipped the whole thing, thinking that what I'm doing, should I just be copying other people's music who's been copied 1,000 times before, or should I actually create something? Yeah. So I started creating, and I went off the classical scene into I went into the harsh noise scene at the beginning of the 90s, really, and started to break as many musical rules as I could, making like really brutal noise music. And I kind of destroyed it more and more and more. And the more I destroyed the sounds, I ended up with some like ambient soundscapes, which led me into the music of like meditation, relaxing, and those things. And somewhere in there during 90s, I found the what we would call like throat singing, didgeridoo, drums, this music that really comes from inside. And I got really fond of that, and I started working a lot with like world music, like ancient types of world music, and weird kind of combinations of those. And then when I met Gustav and Maria, we started doing like medieval stuff, and we ended up doing a lot of shows at like Viking markets and for the communities and such. And then I kind of went into like, but I'm all into the roots of music from everywhere. But what about my own roots? What was this up here in the northern spheres back in the days? And then I started specializing in this, and about 20 years ago, I started doing lectures about it. And from there, my life has been mainly about that, really. So,
that's really cool. But it's a difficult thing for you to do, isn't it? Because we've got like finds of instruments and things, but we don't know what the music sounded like. So I guess what you're doing is creating your own music based on historical instruments rather than...
Yeah, I do a lot of lectures about like I can show you all these instruments. Now it's easy. When I started, it was really hard to find someone to help me make these instruments because nobody did that back then. So I started making them myself. I was not very good at it. So I started like finding luthiers that was interested in experimenting, and then I started to gain some of my instruments. Today it's much easier, fortunately. So where was I heading with this? Well, but I do these lectures where I can say that this instrument was found there, the history is this, and you can use it in this way. But when it comes to like what music they did, we have no idea whatsoever. There's almost no sources of anything pointing at what kind of music they made. And when you go really far back, because my lecture starts more than 40,000 years back in time, and when you go that far back, you're not even allowed to call it music anymore when you talk to the archaeologists, which I find a little bit silly, but I understand why. But I can talk more about that later. We'll come into those instruments in this interview. But yeah, and when I make my own music, it's really modern music inspired from I use a lot of at least for my next album, and also for like the live album Bronseplassen, which is more lyric based, like skaldic songs. I have lyrics which is inspired by the ancient times and religion in everyday life. I do make a lot of like instrumental music, which is more of inspiration based. I mainly use like for instance my world music album Ferd, which was released by Norse Music a few years back. It's 95% historical instruments from the northern regions, and the focus on the album is where did these instruments come from, and what kind of inspiration did it bring, like musical inspiration could it have brought back to the northern spheres from where they found the instruments, because obviously someone played them. So yeah, my focus is about the instruments, the sounds they produce. It's about the culture, but it's also about, because every culture is evolving, and what makes a culture evolve? Yeah, it evolves because it meets other cultures and it finds inspiration and learn new things from those cultures. So that's pretty much the main musical theme I'm working with.
I mean, you mentioned that archaeologists don't like you to call it music.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning behind that? Is it because was music more of a sort of spiritual thing, or like for ritual type stuff back then?
Because we don't know really, because the explanation why they do this is that we don't really know did they have music in the same sense as we have music today. Well, you can say that what they would like me to call it is intentional sound. That they make sound for an intention, and the reason is that maybe the sound was a part of like going hunting. You could make the sound of an animal to hunt the animal, which is what we're going to talk about, about food. And then you would make that sound from the animal, and you would try to call for it and hunt that animal. And then maybe in the evening you would tell the story from the hunt, and you would make the sounds of those animals. Is this music, or is it just intentional sound?
Almost like an enhanced sort of storytelling technique. So
exactly. So that's why I will talk about some of the oldest instruments we have heard about when we get to that part, and I will talk more about this at that point, because I don't entirely agree with them, but I do understand very well why we need to have these terms. Back like 40,000 years back, they definitely didn't listen to the radio like we do today, So but I think we will get back to that when I start to show those instruments you asked me to find for this interview.
I mean, I was going to ask you about sort of why historical music, but I think you kind of covered that anyway through your sort of upbringing through classical and stuff. I mean, that's kind of
it's quite easy really. It's because I started off with music that comes from the outside. You get a note sheet and you get an explanation to who made that music like a couple of 100 years ago, and you try to recreate that, which is not so different really, but it's all about reproducing what they did. For me, music needs to come from the inside. It needs to be created inside me. It needs to it's difficult. I do, like when I'm with Vadruna, for instance, I do play what Einar creates. But what Einar creates also, I can relate to his creations. It speaks to me on a inner level too. Partly because I know the guy, partly because we work with the same things. But my music, it's and it's like my album Bluta, which is really tribal kind of thing.
That's one of my favorites, I must admit.
Thank you.
We had it on this morning actually, and I can't remember now, but there's a part when you're sort of chanting at the beginning, and my daughter almost started using it as a call and response.
Yeah.
And I, what are you doing that for? And she said, well, because when someone does the first bit, you have to do the second bit. So she'd almost like you're saying about hunting, I guess, which is like.
Actually, that song is a really old song that we used with the band Avas more than 20 years ago. And normally when we were at Viking markets and stuff, we would start the shows with this song because it is a calling. And what we would do was that like in some Viking cities, like one of the ones in Sweden at Viking, you have this city walls, you know, these mounds around it with fences and stuff. And then I started in the middle of the area where we were supposed to play, and the others were situated on that around the city, different angles. And I started calling, and they started replying from their spots, and then we gathered together and we ended up into a kind of wild improvised choir part with
nice,
you know. So that's where it comes from, actually.
It's funny, I sort of just reminded me, actually, there was a band I saw years ago. They were a marching band. I was actually at a hip-hop gig, but he had the marching band as a support. Cool. But they did a similar thing. So they came, instead of coming on stage and starting to play, suddenly there were drums over here. And what? And then suddenly there's drums over, and they all came from behind you, and they literally came into the crowd, and they're just in the middle of everyone that's trying to dance, and they're just there drumming. Really fun experience.
It does something, you know?
Yeah. And you really like feel the drums then, which I guess ties it back into what you're saying about like the spiritual side of music, right? I mean, like when you're actually feeling the music.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of feedback on this when we did this thing, because you know, it does include the audience in a different way. So I miss those days a little bit sometimes, you know.
No, that sounds really fun.
Yeah. Fun. So
and then, as you say, you've all kind of branched off, and it's become this massive Viking scene, I guess, now, or historical music, I suppose. I shouldn't really just call it Viking music.
No, not really, but but it's, you know, it's a way to express a certain kind of style. But
I think as well, it's because I came across most of you at the same time. Was at Midgard Blue before my daughter was born, so I think it was about 2016. And I met yourself and Benny and Gustav and Maria, and so that's when I first came across everything. It was before sort of Heilung, so Songnaka were playing in the guild hall as well. So I think that's why I associate all that with Viking music, is because that's where I came across
a lot of people tend to call it Viking music, and and I mean, today everybody knows that what people call Viking music is not really Viking music, so it's kind of okay. But if you're looking at the term, it's not a correct term to use, as we don't know what Viking music would be. But it's some sort of a world music anyways, you know, and it doesn't really matter anymore to me. It was a little a part in time where I kind of reacted to it a lot, because it's actually a wrong term to use. But I mean, today I think most people are aware that we don't know what it was, so what we call Viking music is a new term anyways.
We don't know their music. I mean, we don't have any evidence they had drums either, do we? Which seems a strange one. But it's
a big discussion about those drums. I've been in that so many times. But
Yeah.
I think the discussion is about to die. But most archaeologists, they claimed at least for until recent that they didn't have drums in Viking Age. Because there's no findings of them, but it's rather silly thing to assume, as they did have them before. They did have them in the entire world around them, and they did have them after. And there's a few political kind of paintings in churches from like 1200s that kind of claims that they did. So
I believe as well there is one mentioned. I think it might be in Alfred the Great's Chronicle, and I think there's a kind of kettle drum type thing, isn't there?
There's several drums mentioned in sagas, and even older. I mean, even Tacitus is mentioning the people of the north using drums, where he says in his book that the women were playing drums while the men were performing rituals. And that's kind of far back before the Viking Age, definitely. So
yeah.
So of course I'm pretty sure they had drums, but if you put a wooden frame with a skin out in the forest for 1,000 years, it's not there anymore.
As with a lot of things we find, isn't it? I mean, it's all kind of piecing together little bits based on what we've got. I have the same problem with food. I mean, we don't have any recipes, so what do you do?
Yeah, you have to start. You have to be creative, and it's kind of okay. I'm drifting. You need to stop me if I'm drifting too far, but it's kind of every year there's this big convention for music archaeologists, and as a result of these conventions, they kind of make a book with the most interesting recent research. And I think it was last year's book has the whole intro to the book, which is a big thing. Is talking about all the different ways of doing archaeology. And for the first time ever, I've actually seen in such a book that people like you and me are mentioned as an important part of the archaeology. The practical part of it, where you have to try out things instead of just saying that I found this is like it, and then we can try it out and see, but it doesn't work the way you say. It must have been something else.
Yes.
And for the first time, I've actually seen that mentioned as a very positive and important part of archaeology.
It's definitely important. I mean, it's something that's basically my approach. Trying to think. So I've got a good example that I can easily grab. Anyone that follows me will be probably sick to death of me mentioning this. But I have this, this little fork.
Yeah.
And I saw pictures of it years ago, and it took a while to get a blacksmith to make it. And seeing it in a book is one thing, holding it is a different thing.
Yeah.
And so we've done on the very first episode of this podcast, I got the blacksmith himself on, and we tested this in different uses, and we tried to use it as a serving fork, as a carving fork, or just as an eating fork. And it doesn't work as a carving fork or a serving fork because it actually bends. I mean, you can see it's got a bit of a bend to it now, and that's just where we've been like experimenting with it. But before that, I was convinced it was a serving fork, and then I got my hands on it and realized actually it doesn't work, so it must be an eating fork. I mean, or for something else at least. So like you say, unless you actually get your hands on something, and I guess yours is the same with an instrument, you can hear about an instrument, but until you play it and you feel it and experience it, you can't really know what they did with it.
Exactly. And that's another thing with these instruments, because you can talk about what the authenticity of how we use these instruments today. And most people who play these instruments today, they're probably not doing anything even close to what they did back then. But what I do know is that there's just a very few ways you can use these instruments. So pretty much whatever you do would be authentic. It's not necessarily authentic in the context you're using it with synthesizers and stuff like most people in this scene are using a lot. But you can't really use it in a way that's not authentic, because it's a physical acoustic thing. You have a string, you touch the string, it's kind of, you can't do much else, So we know the techniques, we know how to use them, which is authentic, and then we need to start to be creative about it. and it's no use of trying to recreate the music they had, because we will never figure out what that may have been. So let's be creative and make something new with it.
I suppose even if they'd wanted to, because they wouldn't have had like music notes and things, they couldn't have written down a piece of music that even if we found it, we'd be able to replicate, because there wouldn't be any way to do it. It's more, it must be a bit like storytelling, where it's word of mouth sort of thing. So someone plays a song and maybe someone else copies and adapts that song to a different audience.
Yeah. It's like the lyres. There's two ways of using them, and you know, the other way you use, I mean, you can use it playing chords like a guitar, kind of, which we assume that they did while reciting lyrics, like the Skaldic poems. We do assume that at least some skalds were using lyres and were accompanying, like playing chords while singing. And you can obviously also use it like background music and playing it like a harp, like plucking strings.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much what you can do with the instrument.
It's interesting to think as well, like how far back human creativity goes, isn't it? Like we've always wanted to create things.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of a really cool idea.
Yeah. So I guess maybe we're about to head into the aspect of music and food kind of thingy at the moment.
Yeah. So as I said, we can't do food. You've brought some things along, and sort of tangentially, I believe, going to be linked in a little bit to animals. So because I do my animal butchery courses, people often ask me, what do you do with the bones and the skin and different things? So I thought this would be a great opportunity to say, here's an expert. Here's what we do with the leftover animal bits.
Yeah. So music history starts way before that, obviously, because I mean, I think that the first kind of intentional sounds we were making would be replicating sounds, like replicating sounds from animals for hunting, for telling stories. I think it would be to make humming sounds, like melodies to put children to bed. Of course, we don't know if they did that, but it would make sense. Or at least if you hold your kids, you would make some sort of a comforting sound. If it was like, or if it was a melody, we don't know, but they would probably do that. And they would probably make some sounds while they were working. Maybe they even made melodies. We don't know, but we do know that they have had musical instruments quite far back in time. And do you really have an idea about how old the first instrument is that we have found?
Oh, you're going to test me now.
No. It's just, you're going to ask me for the questions later.
I don't know. Couple of thousand years?
It's actually
at least.
Yeah, it's actually 43,000 years old.
43. Wow.
Yeah.
Way off.
So it's a wing bone from a bird. You can't replicate it anymore because those birds are gone way a very long time ago. But it's a wing bone from a bird that was made into a flute, and it's found in the area, in a cave in the area between Germany and France today, I think. And it's broken into pieces, so we don't know exactly how it was. That one is 36,000 years old, and it's the first flute that we probably know that they made scales with to play some sort of melody, because it has finger holes on it.
Right, okay.
We don't know the scale because it's in pieces, so we don't know exactly how it was, but we know that it's a flute and it had finger holes.
So is this similar to, there's a Native American, is it an eagle bone flute, I think? Is that the same sort of?
Yeah, it's kind of similar. It's quite similar to the Kena flutes that they're using in the South America. Today we have a block in there but back in the days it was just topped off in one end, and you just placed it to your mouth, and you blew to the hole to the flute itself to make the sound. And there's another one which is, it doesn't have playing holes, but it's made from a leg bone, I think, from a mammoth, and it's 43,000 years old. It's found in the same cave, I think, actually. Yeah, at least in the same area. So we know that they had instruments that you can make sounds with 43,000 years ago. We don't know if they used it for making melodies. You can make melodies with it even without finger holes. You can make simple kind of like maybe 3, maybe 4 notes, depending on the instrument, by actually closing the end of the tube.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's possible. It's like one of those whip flutes, you kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if they made music, we don't know, but they at least made sounds. Maybe the sounds were a way of like gathering the children, you know, when soup was finished. I don't know, but they had this, and it's made from bones, which is related to food, because they would gather the animal to make food, maybe clothes and tools like instruments, stones, arrows. And of course, I have to show. So these are not that old. These would be instruments that you can use in Viking age. So it's a deer bone and it's a moose bone.
Yeah.
So
nice. That's a hefty sized moose bone.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the lower leg for a moose.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah.
These also have another story. It's made by one of the, it's a Norwegian guy who has been one of the guys to produce these kind of instruments and the lutes, the wooden horns and such for a long time. Unfortunately, he passed away last summer.
Oh.
So we lost one of the guys who's really been helping out with what I do. So these instruments means even more to me now.
Yeah.
It's really good quality instruments. So yeah, so bones, yeah, that's definitely related to music. When I'll just continue, right?
Yeah, you. I'm happy to just listen.
Yeah, and I have another bone here. Yeah, obviously you could use it to hit a drum or whatever, but you could also attach something like this onto it, which is hooves.
Ah, yeah.
So again, related to the animals, and there's a lot of sound on it. I have no idea how it will sound for you guys, but
not hearing it.
Huh?
Couldn't hear that, I'm afraid.
All right.
Yeah.
I hear it. It's hurting my ears.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. It didn't make any sound this end. There's nothing on.
Oh, that's strange. But this is kind of like it's not.
I can hear that.
Yeah.
No, it stopped again. That's weird. When you picked it up, it made a noise, and then it stopped when you started shaking it.
Maybe it's because it's very loud, so it turns down the sound when I play it. Maybe it helps to play it.
Yeah. See, I'm getting the very gentle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also have these, which are kind of a lot of different things here. We have hooves from sheep. We also have seeds from plants, which is also relative to food. And it's definitely, I mean, I use this instrument insanely much. I can use it for making like watery sounds. I can use it for rhythms, you know, and I use them all the time. I even use them on my feet when I'm doing children's lectures, being like in some sort of a clowny role for them. So yeah, that's at least a lot of uses for bones and hooves and seeds. So I'll keep these away so I know what I've been talking about and not. And of course, we have like antlers. You can use different like. Many of you have probably, I assume that some of the people watching this channel has been listening to Heilung, and they've probably.
I would imagine so.
They've probably seen Maria standing on stage with some bones doing like.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So these are quite cool. They're from again from a moose, the ribs. and you could obviously use them as like drumsticks. You can use them to just, you know, rhythms and all sorts of things. It's a very usable thing, and antlers again also makes this really hollow, nice sound.
I should probably point out the obvious, but if anyone's only listening to the audio of this, they should probably jump over to YouTube and watch, so they can actually see the items that you're talking about.
Yeah, that would probably help. This is one of the things I'm normally talking about, at least in the children's stories, when I tell about my grandma who weren't very good at cleaning her teeth. So again, we're back to the moose, because they're bigger, of course. And again, you could.
Doesn't come out on there.
All right, it's probably.
Nah.
Maybe that.
No. Right. No.
I have to make a video showing these things then. At least it's like we would call a raclette. It says like kind of rhythmic parts. And there's also later in history, like into the medieval times, and also different places in the world, you find different versions where they're actually using, because the teeth are a little bit loose.
Yeah.
So they can use them to hit them and make rattling sounds, and they put them together, several of them, and they make all sorts of instruments from these actually. So it's a very much used musical instrument.
The moose is very useful.
Yeah, it is. And of course the deers. We can. This design is probably a modern one, but you have hide, and you have. Have antlers, and you have all sorts of seeds or stones or rocks to make rattles with. So yeah, but again, you know, food related stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I already told about seeds, so. And of course, more well-known musical instruments that are more known for making like melodies and music is a cow. You can't really make. I'm not gonna try to blow it because it's insanely loud, so we won't probably plucked out.
Yeah.
It's a cow horn. You can blow it. You can make a tone. You could also make different tones by putting your fingers in there. It'll go lower when you put it into the horn, and so you can make like maybe 4 to 5 notes with this one. You can't really make playing holes on these kinds of horns. It's as soon as you lift one of the fingers, you lose half the sound.
Oh, okay.
So for making that, you would go to these instruments, which is in Scandinavia, known back to at least the 400s. There's a find of a goat horn in Sweden. But again, we know that they played the horn instruments for thousands of years. And if you look at music history, most sources points back to the East. Some sources point back to like China. Some sources points back to like probably a lot of what we had up here we found from Miklagard or Istanbul. Because in the Mideast they've been doing this for thousands of years. But these are, if you're interested, you can go to my YouTube and you can search for a song called Bukkehorn, which is goat horn in Norwegian. And you can hear me play it.
Yeah, I know the one you mean. I've got the sound in my head.
Yeah. And back to we don't have finds of these in Scandinavia, but we have a lot of finds of them from the Mideast and from Persian music. And some of you have probably seen Gustav play it at Midgårdsblot during the opening
ceremony. Yeah.
So it makes a really low sound, which is cool. Again, I can't use it here, unfortunately. That was a pity, really. So yeah, that was a lot of horny stuff.
Yeah.
And these kind of things. I mean, we have if you go into history, there's so many things pointing back at this. Some of the oldest findings of god statues, which is goddesses, are doing something that looks like playing music. Like some of them are standing like this with something that seems like playing like a rosette or something. Some are holding round objects like this and pointing at them with a stick, which also kind of, you know, it may not be a drum, but you know, it's kind of, it makes you think of drums anyways.
Yeah.
And then if you go back to like the Neolithic times, again, back in the Stone Age, we do have findings of instruments similar to this, which are small ceramic pots. And even archaeologists are claiming that they have been used for drums. I'm not really sure. They're small. I think maybe they're used for maybe eating, making food of some sorts or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you make them to drums, they would sound something like this. If you could hear that.
That doesn't come out here. No.
That's frustrating.
It's a silent drum.
It's really frustrating. It makes a very, very light kind of beep, beep, beep sound. Right. Because it's small and you don't, it's closed. So I'm not sure if they have been drums or if they've been something else, but there's different ways of making those. And it's a very common thing to use in terms as drums. But there are a few findings that seems to be quite obvious. And one of these findings are drums looking similar to this one. And today, most people would probably say, belly dance, because they're normally used for like the solo players for belly dance. Yeah. There are ceramic pots like this. Some of them has this kind of ears to them. And they assume that there have been like fish skins, like on this one, attached to them. So this is made to me by a friend of mine from Morocco, who makes, I don't think he makes the ceramic, but at least he gathered the fish and put them on, because it's not very common to find fish skin drums anymore.
No, I don't think I've ever heard of one being used as a drum, fish skin.
If you go back to my album Ferd, there's a lot of this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially you can hear it a lot in the songs like Østavind and Kyst, at least. Yeah. It's like it's a sharp kind of, like when you listen to belly dance, there's always someone playing really fast, like thing. It's one of those.
Right. I only recently found out you could make leather from fish skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a guy up in Scotland, Hamish, Pictavia Leather. Yeah. And he does like fish skin leather.
Great guy, by the way.
I'm doing a course with him in 2 weeks.
You should say.
He's going to show me how to do the fish skin leather.
Yeah, say hello from me. We met several times, not so far from here, and I made some music for a documentary movie about him once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's a small world, you know.
It is, yeah. Everyone seems to know everyone, and it's funny, like getting into reenactment myself. I've only been doing it probably 5 or 6 years. But like your world opens up to all these things you've never heard of, and you meet all these really cool people. It's and everyone knows everybody.
Like coming home, really.
Yeah,
it is. And while we're at it, I cannot talk about like drums without, you know, showing one of these kind of things, which obviously is regular skins. This is a goat skin, but you can make them from any hides. So
yeah, I mean, got mine behind me. Yeah.
So this is actually the first drum I ever made, and it's still my favorite.
Yeah.
I made it back in, when was that? A bit like 98 or something.
Yeah.
So that's a long time ago.
So was that self-taught as well? Like when you work out you want to play music with these old instruments, did you just have to work out how to make it? Because we didn't have like the internet and stuff like today.
No, it's not like today. I did have a friend that had made a few drums that showed me a little bit tricks and what to do and don'ts. But that was actually a few years later. So when I started, I really had no idea. I just started and tried it out. and
Yeah.
the one actually works out. So it's still with me.
It's always the way though, isn't it? You get when you don't know how to do something like cook a certain dish or whatever, it always goes perfectly the first time. And when you know what you're doing is when things start to go wrong, I find.
Exactly, because it's
Yeah.
So yeah, I had this really wild experience with this once. Again, music coming from the inside, because back in the days, my second Viking band was named Skvalder,
Yeah.
which was when my brother Benny came into the picture and started doing Viking markets and stuff. Also,
So he came into it after you.
yeah.
Yeah.
When Avas was like, Avas was around for a few years doing a scene element of shows on Viking festivals and stuff, because we were the only ones. I mean, almost no one else. There was a Danish band with Nana and those, which was around, but apart from that, there was almost no one. And
Yeah.
few bands doing like medieval stuff, but we were, I mean, when we started off, we had no idea what we were doing. We were just banging our drums, singing, yelling, doing whatever came from the inside, and people absolutely loved it. Some people absolutely hated it. People were actually fighting about us on markets, like physically.
Wow.
Yeah, because some people hated the drumming at night, and some people absolutely loved it. So after a few years, I kind of started demanding to have we need to have like agreements on when to play and not, because we can't take that responsibility when a market books us to come play and they say, yeah, play all night. Then people start hitting us because they hate us because they can't sleep. They need to find some rules for that, because it should be open to all people, also those who don't like that, So it was a journey. Yeah, that was a sidetrack again, but Skvalder was normally doing a market up at Iceland. We were there every year until that damn thing happened up there and they went bankrupt,
Yeah. I think there's at least one video on YouTube, right?
There should be a few.
Up in Iceland. Yeah, I'm sure I've seen something in a mead hall or something like that. I don't know.
That's crazy. There's some more like musical stuff also, but that's I mean, it's classical. Every last night on those festivals, if you had a Viking dress and something Viking-ish to drink from, you can just go and you could just pour yourself in a bar. You might, for free. So those parties were so wild. So, but we also had this rumor up there that Skvalder never stopped playing before either one person or one instrument was broken. And kind of like nights we didn't, so we had a lot of blood on our drums and stuff, because things were really crazy, more crazy than nowadays. So one of the years I actually left my drum at home. I left it on my wall, and it didn't like that. So when I came back home, it has jumped down from the wall and it was laying face down on the floor with a cracked skin.
Oh no.
So I never left it again after that. So this is the second skin.
So same drum but different skin.
Yeah, because it told me that you're not leaving me back home anymore. So I had to because it was just hanging on the wall in my living room, and when I came back, it jumped down and cracked.
No.
So yeah, that was like a drum saying something. So that was for the drums. You want me to continue? I can do this all day.
I got as long as you've got. I mean,
no, we're actually getting to an end when it comes to food related stuff. But I have to show you something funny. It's just funny, and I don't really think they used that for music back then. But I did a project for the Nordic Animism channel last year, a song called Raven something. yeah, I did so much music last year. You know, but you can see in the video, you can see me using these actually.
Yeah.
So you can actually use herbs and plants to make
Yeah.
musical instruments. But that's just a fun thing. I don't really think they did that back then, but but then
It's funny.
when talking about am I there? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But like Viking Age music, you can't, you know, not talking about a few well-known instruments. I'll find a couple of them for you. So if I put you there, is that safe?
I think I said before we started recording, but your workshop is amazing. I mean,
thank you.
it's
it's
a great collection. Yeah,
a lot of years of collecting.
yeah.
So yeah, many people who's been listening to this kind of Viking music, these instruments are probably not in tune at all, but I can't play them on this recording anyways. So
Yeah.
most people would know how these things sounds. And today, you know, people are not very happy when you say that you eat horse food, but they did eat horses. They stringed this instrument with horse hairs. And in many cultures, we haven't found that in the Nordic regions, but in other regions, especially where it's warmer and drier, they also normally would use skins on top of the instruments.
Yeah.
It's quite common. You have it on many instruments in Africa, in India, and such, that you actually use a skin instead of a wooden top for the box. So definitely related to food again. And
Yeah.
animals. I also have these instruments, which should be familiar to you. It's the Sutton Hoo lyre.
Yeah.
From Sutton Hoo in England, or well, really this part is what's left from the original. I mean, and a few bits and pieces, so it's you know, freely
Reconstruction.
Yeah, because it's based on other finds.
Yeah.
On this one, you can hear me play it also again. I'm referring to my music since I can't play much here. So if you go for a song called Gran, which means pine, you could actually, you can hear me play it. The strings here are artificial horse hairs, because horse hairs are not very, you know, when traveling, sleeping in tents, and, you know, very unstable. So I use artificial ones, but it has this really nice damp sound to it. If you look for my album at Bronseplassen, which should be named Live at Bronseplassen, really, you can hear me play on this one. And lastly, of course, the instrument that everybody knows from Viking Age, many assume, which has nothing to do with Viking Age.
Yeah.
And that's kind of funny when I do show these, because, you know, this is pretty much almost before Viking Age, and this is a long time after Viking Age. So this is dated to the 600s, which is early Viking Age. This instrument, which is very common, I mean, Einar made it very famous. It's 1,000 years newer, because this instrument is made, the carbon dating, which is not that, you know, you can't really say it's exact, but since it's not that old, it's kind of exact.
Yeah.
So this instrument was made pretty close to 1600. Which is kind of long after Viking Age.
Is that the one that was just sort of sat in a farmhouse somewhere?
Yeah, it's found in a farmhouse in Norway.
Yeah.
And to me, it makes the history much more interesting, really, because, I mean, we stopped making these instruments in Europe in around like 1100. When, I mean, the church came with new instruments and new ideas, and the instruments started evolving, and modern instruments came around. So in Norway, we actually kept this tradition for several hundred years, and it evolved. This is a much more evolved instrument than the ones that were available in Viking Age. The sound, the box, and everything is much more modern. And on these instruments, you would use interstrals or gut strings, like you use in. I mean, if you listen to orchestras replicating old music today, they still use gut strings.
Really?
And as far as I know, there's even a finding of I think it was in Germany, something that seems to have been cat gut string factory from the medieval days.
Oh.
So when I do my children's lectures, I'm making a lot of thing, a big thing out of that for all the young ladies. Oh, cat drills, poor cats, So yeah, so that was a lot about music instruments and relays.
Yeah.
To at least it's. I mean, you would hunt an animal and you would use as much of the animal as you could, and some of it would be food, some of it would be tools, some of it might even be instruments, which is kind of like, I think, the close up of that part of the interview.
I'm gonna say yeah. But I think you said earlier that some of them might have been used in the hunting process as well. So that the horns in hunting. I think you said, did you mention earlier they were a part of the hunting itself?
Yeah, probably. Maybe not the instruments, because they might have been scaring the animals. But you would at least make the sound of the animal to try.
Right. Okay.
And maybe also later when we started more like herding and collecting, when they started making fences to hunt the animals into fences so they were trapped, then you could use instruments to scare them, and then they would run the other way and all of a sudden they were trapped. And obviously we think that they have been using instruments also, like when finding a new cave for your family after your neighbor kind of broke your last one or something. you could use a horn to scare whatever would be in there, like a bear or whatever. So in that terms, I think that they have used them, and I think that maybe flutes and stuff has also been used for communicating, because you could like make like birdie sounds that wouldn't scare the animals, but the people you were hunting together with would know it was you, and you can make different signals for different meaning, like there's no animals here, or I just found one, or whatever. And we also know that they've been used for shepherds. There's a huge tradition around the world for shepherds making music. One of the parts is probably because they get bored up there. One of the parts is probably to keep the herd together. If they know that you're the safeguard and you make that sound, then they would come to you if they got lost. Also known that they used horns for making different kind of messages, like for instance, like oh, you pretty lady I met at the party last night, I'm all alone up in the mountains now, or I'm out of food, or so they've been used at least in similar kind of contexts as hunting. That's for sure. So
really fascinating.
It's a lot of music geeking.
I mean, as you said, we couldn't hear any of the instruments today, but in case anyone hasn't heard you before, obviously they can find your stuff on YouTube and Spotify, right? I mean, so they can check out the songs that you've mentioned that use the instruments as well if they need to. They'll have to have like their phone open playing the sounds as they listen to the podcast.
Exactly.
So, take notes.
It's I'm pretty much all over out there if you're into it. So check out. You can find me on kjellbraaten.com also, and be sure to check out Nevala, by the way, while I'm into that.
Love Nevala.
Yeah, that's a cool project.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to see you guys at Midgard Block, as you know.
I know.
And yeah,
And
I was down the front row. I didn't even know you were recording it until the video started coming out.
no,
I was
it's
unaware of that.
a couple of weeks now, and you will be able to see the whole show again.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain I can see the back of my head.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's sort of favorite new artist band. I don't know, what would you refer to it as? Project?
Yeah, it's becoming a band. It was a project when Jonas came to me. It was his project, and he actually started working the project in England with a different producer, but then Corona came, and he was here, and producer was there, and so he came to me instead, and we made the rest of the album together. And now it's like the main base of the band is a trio, so it's a really good power trio with me, Jonas, and Rob van Barschot, the drummer. So you can say that we have a lot of the music industry in that band with Jonas from Heilung, me who've been with, and Rob from oh, I lose words. Omnia, it's the band. So, so that's that power thing.
I think I like it so much as well because it's so different. It's not just like, as we're saying about like Viking music. Like there's a sound now that people come out with, and Nabala came out, and it was like, oh, wait a minute, this is different.
I mean, it's me and Jonas. We couldn't be either Vardruna or Heilung. That would be silly, you know. They're already there, and why try to sound like someone who is already there? Because they're already there. You will never be as good as them to do that, anyways. So do your own stuff instead. And I really like the craziness in Jonas's head when it comes to making music. It's amazing to work with that guy.
Yeah. Actually, it reminds me as well is when you played your set in the Guildhall at Midgard Block. And I mean, you kind of had a lot of your friends come in and help you to perform, because I think on the album it's just you, right? Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so you had to get everyone together. And because I was down the front, I could sort of catch snippets of your conversations of telling people what they need to play next and how it was going to go. And there was just like, you could see the skill involved with all the different people that you'd chosen to play, and how you could say to them, you need to do this now, and they would just do it, and it worked. And like there was so much skill, and then at the end there was like so much love, like you were all hugging each other, and like because it had gone so well.
It was really important for me because Runa at Midgårdsblot came to me and asked me to do my Blot, or my album Blot, as like combination between a concert and a Blot. And for me, it's like, okay, it's Saturday evening at a music festival. There's a lot of drunk people. I can't make a Blot, like a Blot, but I can do something similar. And for me, the album is a very, very personal thing. It was a very hard album to release because I chose to produce this very, very raw, very honest and raw. I didn't like fix all the tones I'm singing way out of tune. When I'm hitting my drum the wrong thing, I kept these things to make it honest and raw for the purpose of it. And when I was trying to figure out how to do this live, I could try to do it alone, but that would be something completely different. Maybe I will do it later, but I wouldn't try to find like, okay, who can I ask into this that are good musicians, but that also understands what this is all about, because this is not only music, this is something more. So I found these people, which are, amazing musicians, and they've never been on a stage together before. Several of these people haven't even met each other before. So we got like 4 hours. Some of us got 4 hours, met up a few days before, and like just went through the sets one time. But that was also
That's incredible.
Yeah, because we needed to keep it that raw to be able to create something similar to the album
and give it the authentic sound of.
Exactly, because if we spent hours and hours and hours rehearsing this, it wouldn't be the same.
Yeah,
So, but it's yeah, I was really, you know, scared when I went on that stage.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there were so many things that could have possibly gone wrong. But then again, I was quite confident that I had the right people with me.
Yeah. As I say, you could see how it all came together, that everyone, although they might not have been perfectly familiar with what they were doing, they were skilled enough to pull it all together, which was awesome.
Yeah. And it's important because I can't, with such an honest and such a personal thing, I can't ask people to play what I would do, because that wouldn't be inside them.
Yeah.
I gave them the songs up front, and I say that, okay, you do the drum parts, but you need to do them your way.
Yeah.
Because it needs to come from you, you know. So that's also really important when working with music in this way. And to those people who has been on Midgardsblot, they probably, I mean, they've seen Folket bortafor Nordavind, they've seen Runahild, you know, and it's all about that, especially Runahild. You will never do the same song 2 times, you know, because to her also it's so important that it needs to come from the inside. It needs to be there then, you know. And yeah, it's a different way of thinking music.
So do you see it as, is it like a spiritual thing for you? I don't know whether it's religious, but, you know, spiritual.
Definitely spiritual, yes.
Yeah.
And all music I make, okay. I mean, you might have heard my new EP that I released this week, which is like, but that's commissional work, and it's work that I like 6 to 12 years ago. For commissions, it works the way that when you make a commission, very often the people who you're making it for, they own the rights to the music for a certain period of time, so they can make and release their product. The products I made this music for were never finished, but now again the contracts are gone, so I can release my music. That's why I did it now.
Yeah,
that's why it's different from other music you heard me make.
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah,
because this is music constructed for a purpose. It's not music that appears inside me, you know. It's a different way to make music.
Yeah.
So it's quite different, but I kind of like it anyways, which if not, I wouldn't obviously release it.
No, you're not going to release something you don't like. That's not going to work for you, is it?
No, I can tell you a secret. There's another EP coming up shortly.
Yeah.
Which is much more Viking-ish.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
There's a couple of other commissional works, but it's I didn't include them here because they're different from what I left on this one. So it's a couple of new releases before summer.
Very cool. If you like, we'll move on to my set questions.
Yeah, you can do that.
They're personal opinion, so don't panic. All right, so the first question is, if you had an unlimited budget, what would be your dream project?
Oh, I'm always on a limited budget. I mean, you won't get rich from doing what I do. So
no, but say that someone says to you, "Here's $1 million," or however much.
Yeah.
What would be your dream project to work on?
I think my dream project is exactly what I do, really.
Just keep going.
Yeah, I'm this really, really, really lucky guy who just found my own way, and I absolutely love what I do.
Yeah.
I would be, maybe I would like to do more in winter time, and because I'm spending my entire summer touring. Like last year, I was continuously touring from 2nd of May and for 6 months straight.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I decided, so I bought this camper van that I live in when I do that, so I can go to a job somewhere, and because there's distances in Norway, it's not a big country, but we have distances and small mountain roads. So go from here to Oslo takes at least 8 hours. And
whereabouts are you? I don't actually know where you are.
I'm in Bergen.
Bergen, okay. Yeah.
So if you look at the map, I mean, if you ask someone in Europe, they would say like, yeah, it's maybe 3 hours drive, you know.
Yeah.
Then we had the mountains and bad roads. So what I would do is that I go
Hmm.
to somewhere and I do my job for maybe 3 to 5 days on some Viking markets or for a museum or a music festival, whatever. And then I take my car and I start going to the next place. But then I maybe have like 4 days so I can just stop somewhere at a lake or in the mountain or whatever and be with my snail house hut. You know, it's a perfect life. I mean,
Sounds good.
yeah. So
yeah, very nice.
I think I already do my dream project.
That's a really good answer.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's nice to find someone that's doing what they love and making it work.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go slightly food related with the next question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you could survive on a Viking age diet?
Yeah, of course. I would need to learn a lot more about it, but I mean, people have survived on that diet before, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, of course I would survive on that.
So tied into that, the next question is there anything you would miss?
A tiny problem for me though, as an extra, is that I have celiac and milk allergy.
Ah.
So I can't have flours or milk products, not even lactose-free, since it's the protein I'm reacting to.
My wife's the same.
Hmm?
My wife is the same.
Ah, exactly. Yeah, but then still
but she can have butter.
Yeah, I can't have regular butter, but I can have what we would call ghee, which is it's a special way of treating it, so you can actually get rid of the protein. It's some sort of a heating process, but I'm not so good with these things. I don't know. So they do it to their butter.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there any other foods that you would miss if you were living on a Viking age diet?
Kind of. I like all sorts of foods, really, which is one of the main good things about traveling. You know, meat foods. Unfortunately, the last like 10 years, it's been more difficult as I got this problem. So I can't just go for it anyways. But I'm not really sure, because you can make so much good stuff with a Viking diet, you know. And if you extend, I mean, what I do with Viking music is that I go into the traditions we had here, and then I search for the traditions. Where did these traditions come from? And if you extend the same for food, then you could kind of like, you would have the whole Europe, Russia, Mid East kind of cuisine in Viking age, and I think that would be kind of, I mean, what would there be to miss, really?
I get a lot of people, I think, go along the lines of things like sugar and caffeine, that type of stuff.
Okay, I do drink coffee every morning. I don't use sugar really. So yeah, I would probably miss coffee. Yeah, that's right. I would, but I don't really use sugar in my diet, you know. So I never add sugar to anything.
Yeah. Fair enough.
It's like Frank Zappa did back in the days. I think he actually did it in Norway too, back in the 70s when that song became popular, the Bobby Brown song, and everybody loved that song. But you know, the people who loved Frank Zappa, they didn't love that song. So he started his concert playing the Bobby Brown song, and everybody was happy, and he continued playing the Bobby Brown song again and again and again, until you know most people had left the facilities. And then he said to the rest of the guys that it's good to see that someone understands it, so let the show start.
There's have you heard of the British comedian called Bill Bailey?
Yeah, I heard about, but I must admit I'm not very familiar with his work.
He's very good with his musical instruments, and he sort of mixes in music with comedy.
Yeah.
And we saw him live once, and he did that thing at the end with the encore. So he does the show, a few people get up and leave, and then he carries on and does an encore, and then a few more people get up and leave. And he did it about 5 or 6 times, and every time he goes, And we were sat in the front row, and so we'd see him stood at the side, and he'd come back in and go, right, now that those lot have gone.
That's
And
nice.
it would just keep going. And it went on for like another, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes, I think, in the end.
Oh, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. I know he met, I know recently, because there was a whole, I don't know if it was Metal Hammer magazine or something, had a piece with Bill Bailey and I know, and I think they met at one of the London gigs, and yeah, I reckon there'll be a collab at some point. There's got to be.
Yeah, that would be nice.
That'd be fun. Yeah, because he's got all kinds of weird and wonderful instruments from around the world that he pulls out, and he's always looking for stuff that people have never heard of to pull out on stage and do something fun with.
Cool. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that, by the way. So
Yeah.
if you go to my YouTube, on my latest EP, there's this song called Acoustic Oscillator, which is a remake of an old like electronica song.
Yeah.
I have a video there. I think I put it into the playlist that I called The Cabin from a new EP. And there's actually a video I made when the song originally released in 2016, where I actually show all the instruments I'm using on that track. It's kind of a funny, humoristic video where I show all these weird instruments and talk about them.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'll have a look. Right, so 3 more questions and then I'll leave you in peace.
Yeah, or maybe I leave you in peace. I mean, I'm the talker.
I say I've got all day, it's fine. I've got other stuff I should probably be doing, but
yeah. Same here.
It's always fun just to chat to people.
Yeah, it is.
What's the worst food you've ever eaten?
I think I know exactly what to answer there. I've eaten a lot of things, and I've eaten a lot of food that people hate, like surströmming and rotten shark and all that.
Yeah.
But I don't find it that bad, really. I mean, if you go to a pub in Iceland and you eat the rotten shark they serve you there, it's terrible.
Yeah.
If you go to somebody's home, that's not what they eat at home.
Yeah.
So, but we did get a serving on the Viking market up there once, and well, when you sit there and you eat, and all of a sudden, in the middle of your meal, you figure out that there are small white things crawling around inside your meat, then that's not very good.
No.
That's probably the worst meal I've ever had. So, yeah, there was a lot of not so very happy Vikings up there.
So what was the food that
it was? It was fish. I don't know exactly what it was. It was just this big serving that they served all the Vikings.
Yeah, but it kind of been cooked for them to be crawling around inside.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was absolutely horrible, and everybody was really, really, really furious about it. Yeah,
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Really, I was given some horns so I live by Avebury in Wiltshire, and there's a goat farmer friend of mine there, and she had some cattle and took the horns, and she was trying to find a use for them. I have discussed sending them to Dan Farrand, funnily enough, but they were sat in my studio, and then I came in about a week ago to find maggots crawling out in the middle of those. Oh no. And that wasn't to eat, but I had to dump them in the garden before I can do something with them. Yeah, because they were intact, blood on the sides and Well, the next question potentially you could have the same answer for this one, I guess, is what's the most memorable meal you've ever had?
Yeah, well, I do remember that. Oh, I had so many. I think one of them was actually, I think it was back in the late 90s, my first visit to Morocco, actually. And we spent a couple of weeks in a very tiny village, which is unfortunately broken now, close to the coast of Morocco. There's a really nice city called Essaouira. And close to there was this small tiny village called Diabat, which was absolutely wonderful, small tiny poor village with village people. It has a really great story, but it's a long one, so I'll leave it for now. nowadays it's just scenography for a golf resort, which is really, really sad.
Yeah, yeah.
The whole eucalyptus forest is taken down to make a resort. So it's really sad. But we were staying there for a while, living with this local, really nice local guy, and we went out there and we hunted some wild pigeons. And he came with this. They have this in the Moroccan cuisine. We have this clay pots that you cook food in.
Yeah,
it's which absolutely makes things really nice. So this big pot on the fire at the sea in the eucalyptus forests with wild pigeons that we hunted, and that was memorable.
That sounds great.
It's a really great evening.
Yeah.
We had some weird instruments and we were jamming around, and that was
that's fun.
Great. Yeah.
So the very, very last question for you is: you've died and your family and friends are preparing your grave goods. Ooh. What food and drink do you get to take to the feast in Valhalla?
What to bring there? I mean, they have food there, right? So I've been playing Andrimne in a theater group for many times with me and my ex. This theater group that made funny children's stories for Viking markets with a fighting group. And one of those stories were about when Andrimne lost the mead and the meat for the Valhalla fighters. So I know they have good food there.
Yeah.
I've been the chef of Valhalla many times. But I mean, would be some of course, obviously you would need some mead, because I don't believe in when somebody passes away, you should, instead of of course, mourning is a process when somebody leaves, but you shouldn't just cry out, you should try to celebrate the good times you had.
Yeah.
So I would probably make it a great feast with some really good grilled meats, meat, good vegetables.
Nice somber note to end on.
Yeah, but it's been a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah, it's been fun. Yeah.
And even though I'm not such a good chef, and my knowledge about Viking Age food is very limited, I hope it was at least relevant, and it served.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's good to have a bit of variety as well for people. So it's sort of a break from the norm. If every week I bring out some food and give it to someone, whereas this time they'll have something a little bit special to listen to or watch.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? I know you mentioned earlier, but I don't know if you want to reiterate your website and stuff, just so that.
Yeah, all right. You can find me, search for my name, Kjell Braaten. You will find me as Kjell Braaten on Instagram. You will find me as Kjell Braaten Music on Facebook. You can also find me on any streaming service, YouTube, etc. And if you're more interested, you can go to kjellbraaten.com. You can visit my shop to find items like this, and also to check my kind of long discography with I think we're closer to 150 recordings listed up on my discography on my webpage at the moment.
So, I don't even think I've listened to all of those.
No, I mean, a lot of those are small releases from back in the 90s and stuff, which is impossible to get these days, but they're all listed. And as far as I found links to where you can find these things, I've linked them up. So if you click an item, you will find links to most of them.
And what I'll do is I'll pop a thing down in the description underneath the video. Brilliant. Just so that people can find it easily. Right, well, thank you everyone for watching, and thanks, Kjell, for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's been great fun.
Yeah, I've been missing talking to you, so.
Right, bye everybody.
Bye.
If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more, remember to like and subscribe and give the show a rating. You can also help keep the show going by becoming a Patreon, where you'll get early access to all episodes. Or check out my range of merch on my store. Links are in the episode description. Thanks for watching.